you for having me at Arundel Community College. It's a pleasure to talk to creative writing students and to share some of my work. I'm going to begin with this book, Other Voices, Other Lives, and it's a compendium of plays and prose and some poems. And I'm going to begin with a poem that is somewhat inspired by the metaphysical poets who always said the opposite of what they meant. And this is called How a Poem Begins. It's a little thing. Could be the long O's in Kosovo, or a woman alone in the street after the hurricane sweeping Honduras. Perhaps we tell of the child beneath the flood, or the sound of the wind in New Orleans, or the rubble of Afghanistan. They say poetry is insignificant. Such a tiny voice, no one can hear. That's why we write of such little things, insignificant things. I teach poetry, and this year I'm going to every county in Maryland teaching teenage workshops. And one of the things we do is take 10 words that have nothing to do with each other and string them around and see what happens. And this is my 10 words, and it came out to be a morning poem. Each of us has a pond. Mine is deep. I sleep beneath the water in a silence so clear the bloom of desire melts from me. Lightning turns fire to the water of pleasure. Fish are jumping in my heart. No, they are real fish dreaming of me. No, it is not a dream. This is a real heart. So I think the words were like pond, clear, fish, and it is amazing what 20 people in a workshop will do with 10 words, and they will become so inimitable. I wanted to share something that means a lot to me, and it's the story of Mary Wollstonecraft. And when I was in graduate school, I went back to the University of Maryland after I had 4 children, and I was in 18th century literature, and I met Mary Wollstonecraft, who was born in the 1700s. And I could not believe that no one knew about her at that time. And her daughter, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, of course, wrote Frankenstein, and she got all the press. But her mother was the real hero. She wrote The Vindication of the Rights of Women, and she was the first feminist and the first woman to write a serious book in English that was just not a fluffy fiction book with a pseudonym. So I want to introduce you to Mary Wollstonecraft, and I'm going to tell you her story. And it begins because she wants to get out of the house, but she does not want to be a governess. So this is called I Can Think of Far Worse Things than to be a governess. Saying that's that and hustling children to the bath. Oh yes, far worse things like prostitution, for example, or embroidering for that matter, or marrying someone I do not love. And although I've never had the pox and one eyelid droops a little, I am not ugly. If I lack sparkle, it's just because there's such a narrow light in this room. Do people think I should be a squirrel or a rabbit in the shed eating wood, unworthy of my work? No. With 12 guineas saved, one can start her own school or buy some self-respect or even start a dowry. If I have to work for people whose fortune was not made in this lifetime, then I will tend to them sweetly, saving this beautiful handwriting for night. So she could read, but she had an instructor, Reverend Clare, who lived down the street, and he helped her along. Now, in the play, I have it much more, the play about Mary Wollstonecraft is much more complicated, where he had unsavory feelings toward her. But the poems are the backstory, and this is called Dear Reverend Clare. You ask if hope gets me up in the morning. I say yes. Not in your house where everything exists, but in mine where all things are lost. The top latch takes the weight of the door, and so it is true, as I teach Liza and Everina all that you teach me. You say my child's sense of wonder is coupled with a grown person's knowing grief, and why shouldn't it be? You are talking to a girl with a pencil hidden in a broken cup on top the highest shelf, stained by curdled cream, behind a ceramic pitcher where it cannot be thrown away. Her father and brother, of course, forbade her to learn to read and write. She was just supposed to do the household chores with 7 other children. But she did go to Ireland and become a governess for Lady Kingsborough, which didn't work out at all. It was a terrible thing because she taught the little girls that they were as good as anyone else. That was not favored by Lady Kingsborough. And so this poem is called Lady Kingsborough Hates Me. For reading my book, Mary, a fiction, aloud. She said I was a mouse in a big house, trying to become a lion, turning her children against me. Today she called me bitter little, angry little, sullen little, and said I'd never be named Mrs. My writing, thoughts on the education of daughters, angered her further. I can hear her bleating still. Really now, a masculine mind, Mary, a governess with a man's mind. She said I killed love and pointed to the tree her yard man had strangled with rope. The tree outgrew its hold, she said, it choked. I read original stories to the children. How dare I write that parents should raise their own children instead of servants? Coming away, I feel guilt for being light of heart, no one else but myself to care for. So she got fired from there right away. And her conflict was always wondering if she was good enough. She had no barometer to compare herself with because no other women were striking out as she was. Am I afraid to be a woman of significance? The fear of blindness is worse than the fact. Rousseau ridicules us. Educate women, and the more they resemble our sex, the less power will they have over us. Power over them is not what I seek, but power over ourselves. We are like little cucumbers, row upon row, gleaming, ready to be cut, sugared, or baked. The moral life is to see the harvest, the peeling, be the knife, the self as source, London with a job of my own, in a flat with old walls. I get up earlier than most men, I write. All day I write for other people. Do our dreams affect our days, or do our days affect our dreams? I would like someone waiting for me. I long for a cup of tea. The light is on the wall. It falls on my plain wooden bed, the gray curtain. Teach yourself how to think, Mary, for no one else will do it for you. Be the knife. Thank God she met Mr. Johnson, the publisher of a paper in London, and he actually gave her a job writing for the newspaper. Here's a woman. I mean, I'd be afraid to go to New York City at this time and try to get a job without knowing anyone. This was in the 1700s. She has a few guineas in her pocket. She goes to London to be a writer, and she meets one person who gives her the chance, and this is called Mr. Johnson. Uncommon kindness is what I call you instead of publisher, telling me I am the first of a new genus. I tremble at the attempt. We must not on any account inform my brother or father, for ridicule has always been their unfriendliest advice. The October winds blow through London, yet I hear only words exhorting my mission. I must be independent. When a writer writes, the words are taken by the reader, but they always belong to the writer. This body, an unwilling recipient for spirit, finally fills with a breath of confidence because of you. My luck is changing. Today I stubbed my toe and to the breaking said, thank you, life. I feel something besides terror. I have a body, a mind, a heart. I invite the world to lay its head on my stomach and listen. So she wrote a column. She wrote about the French Revolution, the American Revolution. She argued with the best of them and tried to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. And she met a man named Gilbert Imlay, who was an American journalist, and he did her wrong. And that's where the poems are what they are, but the play about her has this wonderful conflict where she wanted the love of men, and she wanted to stand equally shoulder to shoulder with them. And that didn't work at that time. So he did her wrong, and she had a child by him, and little Mary Imlay, and he would not marry her. And also, I believe he took credit for her work. It's called Dead Cod in the Sun. Gilbert, again and again, Gilbert, again and again. You leave me for fantasy. Every woman is an idea you come to life for. When we dine, you look over my shoulder. When we shop, you compliment the shop girl's throat piece, pretending it would be good for me. As you dance with another, you talk of my brilliance, my genius, Gilbert. You keep talking about me so your partner cannot move away. And after she will say, he loves Mary so much, he did nothing but talk of her as he held me close. He must love her very much, for he leaned against me many times to say her name. I, a woman of words, freeze when I try to tell you this aloud. So she was always looking for a man that would accept her as an intellectual and as a woman. And the worst thing is that the women hated her. She thought she was going to make their lot better. At that time they had, you've heard the expression rule of thumb, a man could beat a woman with a stick as big as his thumb. And she was out to get women equal education. But they were frightened, and they said that she made it worse when they went home. So I think it broke her heart. The men she could take, but I believe that the women really are what drove her to jump off of the London Bridge into the Thames. Her skirts billowed up and saved her, and fishermen found her. This is called Even Death Does Not Want Me. 3 weeks in bed, I can't even plan a suicide, well, it seems. Dear diary, you are all I have. Liza and Everina suffer because of my act, a death gone wrong. Leaving me this life as cold as the water, I remember the lifting. I closed my eyes and felt the sweet sweep, a swirling, a relief, and then the noise, the lights, the clamor, cold cobblestones, people in a circle looking down. The bright lanterns, a rough blanket, a loud voice in my ear saying, ain't that funny? Was her skirts what saved her, billowing up around her ass? And then a woman, now she'll think twice of wearing pants. So you can see that she did not get much glory in her own life. This is called Overheard today. A vicious sound, famous lady with her book telling us how to act. I could not hear the rest and leaned in closer to the murmuring until she straightened. And then I saw she spoke of me, Mary Wollstonecraft. She held my book Vindication and shook it at her partner. My face flushed. Were it a man speaking, I would not crumble. But now I fear my dream is uninhabitable. All women are in danger unless we pick the bough from the tree ourselves. Yet a stranger was condemning me in a public place. Why not grant me the courtesy given male authors, saying it is controversial? Her fury ascends in my body. She said I made her quest for survival all the worse. Because I can read and write? Does that give me a masculine mind or just a mind? She finally met the philosopher William Godwin, who was another bohemian, and neither of them believed in the institution of the Anglican Church, and they didn't believe in marriage, but she actually found someone who loved her. And she had a short, very felicitous time with him, something she always wanted. This is called I Love You Mr Godwin. It was rare in the extreme to find the kind of writing person I wanted to live with, the kind of writing person for whom loving was ill-advised. Yet here I am in your abode. I am the Mary whose prayers are answered. I am the Mary where the death of the mind's eye could not stop the beating of my heart. I didn't want to lie fearful forever. I wanted to polish my boots and comb their tassels before putting them on to die. The world had forgot that women had thoughts worth hearing, and so the thoughts they had forgot to be heard. Until tonight, William Godwin, I kiss you on top of your big nose. This meeting we were having, what should we call it? A dream we were having together. And I will read one last poem. about her. It is for William Godwin. And the sad thing about this is they did get married because she got pregnant. And she died in childbirth just a few months later, because at that time the doctors did not care very much about sanitary methods of delivering babies, and she got blood poisoning. It took her 3 days to die. For William Godwin, I would cook with berry juice until our clothes were red, roast a lamb in the fire, carve meat for our empty purses, climb the yellow tree with skirts pulled up, sit above London singing my William throat. The candles will burn in all rooms, all day, all summer. I will learn to sew. I will walk backwards until you come home. I will wear your garters, shine your keys, fold your papers for all the world to see. And windowsills too. I will perch there in motion with rain in my hair and the taste of cider as sincere as the dark you'll come through. So I spent about a year on Mary, and actually I discovered her in 1975, and it took me 25 years to write this because she was in me. She was cooking in me, and I couldn't get her out of my mind, and so I just had to take a year off and pamper her. So after Mary Wollstonecraft, there was nothing to do but Anna Nicole Smith. Now, I think some of you are too young to remember because that was like almost 10 years ago. You might have been 7 or 8. But she was a bimbo, it's true. But I liked her. I really loved her because I saw what she could have been. She had a baby. I saw on television when she held her baby. And she had no makeup on. She had this beautiful face with these beautiful cheekbones. And I thought, oh my gosh, if that woman had not been thrown out of the house, had her hands broken by her brother, disowned by her father, been picked up by handlers, filled with drugs, acting like a baboon, they made her a fool. And she never could handle it. So the books of poems is about her. I mean, she was a model. She clearly was a dumbbell, but inside, I think she could have been a good person. And my play vindicates her. It's called Anna Nicole Blonde Glory. And at the end, I rewrite the ending so she wins. So there is the power of a writer. You can change someone's life. And she has a whole new narrative now at the end of that. She's vindicated. And so is Mary Wollstonecraft. This is called Anna's Estate. At the Half-Star Hotel, the lower lip is painted bigger to match the dreams of being a star. She blessed the lumpy beds, bought her own silk sheets. This was before the moral issues, the legal issues, the spirit of the law, the letter of the law, the causes of death, junkies, drug addicts, probable criminal cause, bodies exhumed, frozen sperm, mystery sons, living in sorrow, wrongful death, undue influences. Before the opalescent oceans, where she could never find the truth in things, where she wanted a photo album so bad so she wouldn't die without memories. One day, standing at the free continental breakfast, dragging her sleeve in the jelly, someone walked by, touching her waist like a prayer, like an enfranchisement, and she was on her way in a dress made for someone much smaller, trusting a stranger because he said, the good Lord can't see what happens in Hollywood. And indeed, the good Lord did not. This is a series of people talking to her. It's called Notes from a Distant Glacier. Interviewer, do you want to be someone of worth or do you want to be famous? Designer, if they photograph you nude, it's called art. Critic, they should project her on the wall, the one way far behind us. Trainer, in life there can only be one winner. Mother, would you please sit like a normal person? Manager, take a pill for God's sake, any pill, just do it. Doctor, no medicine can make you stop feeling. Lawyer, don't even think about it, Anna. Death doesn't care about you. You owe it to the world to make it pretty. Director, give them heart, give them breast. Lover, being a blonde beauty doesn't make you a whore necessarily. Anna looks out the window. She sees the pink azalea outside. So pretty, that color. so perfect, it must be fake. Anna looked out her window. It's called fall morning. Children were going to school holding hands, a mild morning. The yellow rose was straining toward the sun. God's word was spoken agreeable in the farm kitchens. An old lady crocheted the air with her hands. From the highest tree, a wren's sound persisted, larger than the wren. A cigarette was thrown away in the street. A poet walked the perimeter of the park. The bark of the beech shone silver. The melancholy breeze wrapped light jackets. With the curtains drawn, an eye mask on her face, the bottle on the floor, Anna lies in the comfort of numbness, disabled again. Thank God, against the moment after waking, saved from awe, even the coolness of white satin sheets. I don't think we can overestimate the difficulty and the tragedy of some celebrity. Anna Nicole had less than Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland, Jane Mansfield. She had less connections, less support, and less of everything. So I think that celebrity is a great tragedy. Fame, the Italian word for fame is fame, hunger. And I think that says a lot about a tragic life like this. This is called negative capability. Why not be happy, the counselor said. Try to be creative, make things. So why not do something useful? Use your hands. Why not, thought Anna, why not? She could start with banana bread. There were always rotten bananas around, and that's what it took. What a mess all over the kitchen, the squishing and buttery hands. Then she ate it. Where did it go? Where did everything always go? She wanted to play video games, but they were too fast for her eyes and hands. She almost wished she still played cheerleader in the afternoon for an old man, the game where she jumped up in the pleated skirt and yelled for his favorite team. He said she didn't have a choice in what he wanted to do with her. The difference between command and management, he said. Why not be happy, the counselor had said just that morning. If she were a loser, like her mother always said, then where was the finder? Who would find her, and when? Once she heard on TV that if a man rapes you, he steals your soul. That had always stuck with her. That's why she always gave in to men, so she wouldn't have to be raped, so she could save her soul. I'm just going to go around here. She goes to a dating site to find her true love and she orders a guy to her specifications, and she wants him in armor because that sounds like a prince that might save her. This is called Toy Town. He was actually a PhD student just working on the side, and he was pretty terrified. Toy Town. At the edge of thought, a frozen pond melted. The guy in armor had taken it all off and was sitting on the floor sobbing. Anna never saw such a thing. She should run, tell him she was expected somewhere or someone was waiting. She needed to be alone. This strapping brute of a man had suddenly become a minute creature, shaking with shame. Anna knew she needed imagination for this one, but trained otherwise from birth, never had a chance. She tried to look serious, she tried to look dignified, but the naked man on the floor reduced her to simplicity. Could she name the problem, name her darkness? The side of her sleeve was offered to his running nose, her field of vision blurred. He told her this was his first day on the job, and he couldn't go through with it. He was a PhD student working his way through anthropology. She bent down and took his head and arms. Now what would she do with her unused understanding? There under the bed, she saw the other satin slipper. Somehow she knew it would fit. So I'll just read a couple of lines from the last. It's called Where Love Is Meant to Be. She always wanted she wanted her name in cement with a star, but that wasn't going to happen. This is called Where Love Is Meant to Be. The gardener told Anna Nicole he could build a small temple where the compost was once housed, now removed, as nothing would grow on the hard earth anyway. Anna said yes. She would like a small shrine of her own, something bright and shiny, with a little cement on the ground, with a gold star in it with her name. She was not the best businesswoman, having failed typing, but she could even charge admission. Public access was ruefully discouraged by the guards. Anna would be kind to herself and mount only those photos with men who did not humiliate her. Also some animals she rescued. Then the idea of singing lessons came up, and she had a good feeling about that. She wanted so much to write a song about why what they did to her did not kill her. But she would have to figure out why first. So that's a little bit of Anna, whom I love and have been happily vindicated on stage. And it makes me happy every time that play comes out to a different ending. So I will go into the history of women, ending with myself. I will go into some personal poems, and this is called Senior Prom. Now, all of you, a senior prom to all of you is wearing little short satin black dresses with no straps and never going to the prom. But in the old days, we literally had crepe paper in the gym, and we wore big skirts, big crinoline fluffy skirts, and we're talking the 50s. And this is called Senior Prom. I went with my husband, and I stayed married for 60 years. So be careful who you go with. This has an epigraph by Kierkegaard that says, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward." Senior Prom. Before the return of innocence at the end, before I asked, "How can I go on without you?" Before everything cost more than $3, before my recipe for dilled carrots, before I bought them Easter dresses but kept dreaming I forgot, before running laps around the dining room table, before saying, "Where does everything go?" Before a crystal of feeling broke open which will not close, before my children came spilling out from a wound which will not heal, before I found I was the past, before the long disease set in, before my dead grandfather appeared 40 years later, pale and white, to give me life. One night, I wore a gown of blue and white, in layers and layers, pale blue under pure white. Before I let go of it all to the sky, before I'd say, "I'm afraid of eternity without you," before the waters were rebuked and we were calm, before the earth was replenished with warm rain, before being torn between wanting to change and not wanting to hurt you, before the spiritual hydraulic lifted me from danger, before my left eye, left breast, left ankle broke off, before my heart was left beating on the sidewalk, before I disappointed everyone I ever knew, before I tried to make everyone in the world happy, we danced the slow dance together with "Good night, sweetheart," coming from the speakers, and time and fever do not burn this away. I do like to honor my elders, my ancestors, because we all come from them and they're all part of us. And this is about my grandmother, who was really hot. I mean, she had 7 children and started a business and couldn't even speak English in Trenton, the first tomato pie restaurant in Trenton. And she never did grandmotherly things, you know. But she showed me what a feminist was. And this is for Graziella Zoda. She used to appear when I was sleeping and show me these visions, and I couldn't figure out what was she saying. "What is the purpose of visits to me twice since you've died? Downstairs near a wood stove I hear you in motion, always working. A long silken dress, tight sleeves at your wrist, soft above the elbow, wide top at your shoulder for free movement. When we were young, you didn't visit. You never baked a cake that I remember, or babysat, or held me in your lap. You were in the man's part of town, running a man's business, calling the world to order. 7 children behind you, raised single-handed in your large house. You were moving, always moving. when I kept losing things like my parents, my children, money, my time, and health, why did you appear in my room with gifts painted red, yellow, blue? Brilliant colored toys, what essential fact did you want me to know that the body is the essence of the spirit and so must be in motion? Now that I've lost my foothold, my direction, my way, what is your message, strong spirit, strong grandmother? What is the meaning of your dream present? A bright clock shaped like a train? Simply that it moves. And in those days, you didn't lie down unless you were really sick. And to my father, I have to read this because I was mad at him for 30 years because he was an immigrant and he was very strict. And we couldn't do a lot of things the other kids could do. And I was always mad and writing 30 years worth of poems about him. And then all of a sudden one day, when all those wet leaves floated off and went away, I realized how wonderful he was, how he had made me breakfast and drove me to school, and how really wonderful he was. And this was a turning point. It's called Angelo, where he cooked something for my class. And that's what the poem's about. If I were to ask what you'd like, it might be to say something kind about you, mention something from the past remembered with love, and so I do. Spaghetti sauce on the bus. You getting up at dawn to cook it, I carrying a pot across 2 states to Princeton, New Jersey, where my professor lived, and where students met to read their poems, eating the sweet red specialty lugged up and down stairs under a huge lid. No one could buy that kind of cooking, at least in those days, although now, of course, there's a restaurant on every corner. I don't know how I asked you, Father, to prepare this dish, or whether, in fact, you offered it knowing your meal was rare in American houses. You remained at home that day while I entertained. I think you hoped to hear them say how sensitive you were, a loving father. And so they did admire you this night, poets heard by candlelight, a fireplace, a stove. In a different room far away, you most likely wished I'd say they liked it. Italian food, something different for me to share. Perhaps I would say good of you. I'll bet you went to bed easily. This time, I've made her happy. I'm going to end with a couple about my husband. Being a woman and an artist means that you have to go places nobody else can go, and they can't go with you. And this is called Advice Regarding a Field of Reindeer in the Snow. If your husband is sleeping, you can leave him a message and go in the airplane with the mysterious pilot just for an hour to land in strange cities, farmlands, perhaps with wet leaves and wooden houses and ruffled curtains. You may walk to the edge of what you thought was a forest and look through a thick wall of ice with a gigantic hole and see field after field of reindeer brushed with snow, standing still. How beautiful, like frozen statues, cold and silent, each staring straight at you, line after line of them, a sight you'd never have seen. Had you stayed home, you'll never forget it. But remember to leave a note before you go, or your return will be bleak. It will ruin everything: trip, field, reindeer, snow. And that's about being married. And I will end with 2 poems. This is a true story. It's called Safety. And I knew my husband when he was in the 9th grade and I was in the 7th grade. And he was a crossing guard. And I thought, oh man, that I am in love with this guy. He has this yellow thing across him. It's called Safety. When you were in the 9th grade and I was in the 7th, you were a crossing guard keeping order at junior high school number 3. No one was disobedient when you wore that wide yellow strap across your chest. No one bruised another, caused trouble, or so much as threw a stone. No one cracked a joke about you, a man in uniform. How did that yellow vest feed your soul to let you know someday you'd fly a plane just to feel the power of a strap across your chest? What liberation to know how to be in charge, strong and capable, flying through gunfire and lightning again and again to come back to me. Although we were young, you were 15 and I was 13, since then, I'd never known the world without you. Now, I must be 12. And I'll just end with mechanical physics. I never knew how to put two pieces together. Say the garden hose, for example, it's nozzle undetectable. I flooded the new coffee pot because the sections didn't quite match. Can you imagine how hard it was to convince myself I could do anything with more than one panel? I didn't even try. IKEA sent furniture in boxes, all marked number 44. I could feel the lessons yet to learn, the escape from reason. I could feel my human failure before UPS left the house. Now, in the lightness of the last of this day, how do I know who will hold me at sunset? I cannot make the alive and the dead parts come together as we once were. I cannot match the seams, square the ending. Thank you for listening very much. Thank you. Yes, they do just what they want, apparently, because I'm the 10th one, and some of them didn't do much. But I think, first of all, you can look at it as an honor, or you can look at it as a job. And I had a project when I took it. I actually think some of the previous laureates each had a wish. For example, Stanley Plumley loved Blake, and he would go into high schools and talk about Blake. And another person liked small magazines, and he helped with that. I am going through every county in Maryland and teaching teenage workshops. So that's my project. But they do not give you a to-do list at all, and it's kind of an honor, but I see it as a mission. I see it as a way of spreading poetry. Here's the platform, you know, that you have to go through the world sprinkling poetry around, which I think could save the world, actually. And as Citizen Grace, I could not call up an arts council and say, let's do would you like to co-partner with me and do a teenage workshop? But as a poet laureate, I can say, let's have a poet laureate poetry workshop, which is the same workshop, of course. But, and they like that because it has a little sexy, it's a little sexier. But I have found that all it is for me is a platform to get to do the work I want to do. And it's the work I've always done, but now it's a lot easier because people answer the phone. So thank you for that question. I never know if I can do it again. Every time I look at that piece of paper, I forget how to do it. I start all over again, like I'm in the 5th grade. And I usually write books at a time, like Mary Wollstonecraft or Nicole, because when I get a hold of something, like Sterling Brown said of Ma Rainey, she just got a hold of me some kind of way. If somebody gets a hold of me, then I will spend a year researching that and doing that. I just finished a book called Showboat about being a Navy wife for 25 years because the military wife has a very, very, very unusual life and a very painful one. And I have held it in all this time, and I finally got that book out. So when I think of a theme, I hope I find time to do it. But if not, I will have a great, great pleasure helping teens write. Some marvelous stuff is coming out, really marvelous. It's a thrill to watch it happen. I believe writers are born. I don't think they can help it. I truly believe, I have interviewed about 2,000 poets in 43 years on the radio, and every one of them says the same thing. They say, you won't believe this, but I wrote as a child. Every one of them says that. I say, no, really? And that's it. You come out, and I do believe writers are like wired a certain way, so they only understand the world, its confusion, by those hieroglyphs on the page they want to decode, and they want to figure out the world through language, and that's the only way they understand things. It clears up everything. Language is the way. Other people do it with color and music, but the only way I understood what was going on was through the word. And every professional writer I know says the very same thing. I think it's a neurological problem. We need an MRI. How many of you are looking at spending your lives that way? Oh, that is so heartening. You're not all business majors, which is fine. We need business. No, we do need people like that. But it thrills me. I think together we can change the world. I do, if there's enough of us. We can, because we write about compassion, we write about kindness, we write about the opposite of violence, and also you can make things right with writing. I had Nicole have a baby at the end that she got to keep and live happily ever after with a doctor. I got her a doctor in my play, so I can do anything. I'm glad, very glad, that's very perceptive, because Nicole, I was talking about her, but Mary, I occupied her reality. And this is really, I actually entered her psychosis. I spent 1 year. My husband always said he never knew who was coming down for breakfast, if they'd have a British accent or wearing a thong or be Nicole or Mary Wollstonecraft. I enter the reality, and you know what is true? Historians can tell you what she did, but I know what she felt. And that was why I wrote it. I thought, I really know how she felt. Once being the only woman in a boardroom of men, and my ideas weren't good enough, I always knew that. And also being born when I was born in the 30s, women were not really, they were not encouraged that much to be what the boys were really. I don't even think we were encouraged to go into science and math. And so I knew the frustrations, and I knew that I could do things, and Mary knew that too. I did not jump off any bridges though, but she really suffered. She really suffered. It was hard in the 18th century. Persona is a wonderful way of hiding. It's like you don't have to take responsibility for it, but it's really your heart and your soul that's in it. But it's not hard to go back to your own life, because I work with, when I teach, I make everyone go into the building of their lives and go on every floor on the elevator and see things in their lives. And I believe that, it's a database. The past is all there. So all I have to do is meditate and go into the elevator of my life and stop on a certain floor and look around and feel what I did wrong, or what I wish I had done, or what was done to me. And I knew a poet who was 95 years old, and he was still writing, Robert Sargent. And he told me a story about his mother told him to go visit the woman across the street, and he lied and said he did, and he never did. And here at 95, he remembered that. And I said, Robert, you're going into the elevator of your life, and you're stopping on the 5th floor. But he didn't get it. But that is all we have to do, is go into our lives and stop on every floor. It's like a building. Like I am a skyscraper, and you're like maybe 20 floors or something like that. But when you get to the roof, then a helicopter takes you away and the building crumbles. But until then, you have all those floors to go in. So I'm never at a loss for material. I do admire anyone who can do long division, and so I think we need people like you. I do not know what to say about making a living. I really don't. I think even the most respected seasoned poets, I think I don't believe that even Pulitzer Prize winners make more than $5,000 a year off of royalties. And that is why everyone teaches. Every poet I know teaches. And that is a wonderful way to live, though. So, but you keep on going on. And you can do my taxes. I think you should make a commitment, first of all, and I mean from the heart, and say, I am a writer, so sue me. You know, I am a writer. This is my commitment. And you're not saying you're a poet. You're not saying you're wonderful. You're not saying you're going to win prizes. But that's the commitment to say. And when you say it out loud in the universe, you're making a declaration and a promise. And then I believe you should write every day. Before anything, I think everyone should write a morning poem. It doesn't matter what it says. Because if it comes from you, it's going to be something. And then when you go through the day picking up images and funneling ideas and colors and what people say and putting those little things on the desk, those little pieces of paper, then when you come to an arid place and you look through them, you'll find things to put into your poem because they're all from you. I just think the commitment, I think if the people who say, I sort of wish I could write, that doesn't cut it. It's a bold thing to do. It's a courageous thing to do. Because you have to tell the truth all the time, or it doesn't work. Lying doesn't work. So to have to open yourself up and show who you are, to be vulnerable is the strongest thing that a writer has. And to become vulnerable is, you have to go through a lot of things. You know, I tell my students they have to have courage, because everyone can use language, but it takes courage to write. And then, you know, I say that, and then I go to a family reunion and they say, I saw the book you wrote about your sister, you know, and she was really very nice. So it's a mixed bag. You still have to tell the truth, but it's an ethical life because you always have to weigh what you're saying so that you really do not harm people. But then again, satire is a great way to get back at people. You know, as the Irish say, give me a pen. I think it's just a wonderful way to live. It just is like being alive twice, because you're always noticing things, and the writer's a noticer. Every minute you have to notice things. That's like being awake. I mean, what's not to like about that? Buddha said, may you be awake one day before you die. And the writer is awake every day, gathering information, reading, talking to other writers, being alive as much as possible. Because no one lying on the couch watching 90 Day Fiancé, which I actually like, but if you just do that and nothing else, I don't think that life is as juicy. The 4 principles that Jung talks about have guided me a lot. Jung talks about a balanced life, the thinking, the feeling, the sensual, and the intuitive. And that means that you're open. Those are really 4 important things to do all day. And if you can dip into each one of those, you have a balanced life. And then if you can put that on page, you might get a balanced poem.